Hi guys, this is the instructional playthrough for Long Range Recon Patrol. This game is set in Vietnam, so the LERPs, as they were known, as a small group of guys, usually sort of 6, and as a token of the game, including the game which shows you there's 6 guys on the token there, so that's your LERP. So this is a solitaire game as ever, and comes with 10 missions, all slightly different, well, all different, all with different objectives, different maps, and so on. Very replayable as usual, and each game will take you 10 minutes to an hour, something like that, depending on exactly how it goes, because things can go wrong pretty quickly. Today I'm going to look at mission 5, so out of the 10, this is about halfway through. They do get slightly more difficult as you go on. Last couple are particularly challenging, first couple less so, as they probably generally a sort of spectrum of difficulty. So mission 5 being about halfway through that ranking, just to show you how it works. This one is called Snatch the Enemy Officer, so it's sort of a snatch mission if you like. It says a high-ranking enemy officer has been sighted in the village. The village is here. The objective then is to extract from the extraction zone, having captured the enemy officer. The capture is achieved, it says, by rolling the enemy officer caught result on the village chart in the village phase. We'll come to that in a moment. So that's how we achieve the objective. We've got to get to this village and then snatch the officer, then we can get off to the extraction zone. So then we're straight into setup, and as usual with my games, this is only a couple of minutes, so nice and quickly. It says setup, take one of each supply plus any one. Okay, so the supplies that you have are down here on the mission map. So you've got water here, so we're taking one of each, it says. So water, clays are claymores, so you can take a claymore, and we can take meds, med pack down here. So one of each plus any one, so we can take one more of those. So I'm going to choose here, I think, to take an extra med pack there, so I can heal up if I get any injuries. So that's the first decision to make. It says place one unalert NVA 6 unit on each of the 2 hexes marked N. So we take, and again, these are the counters that come with the book, so we take 2 unalert NVA 6 counters, you can see there, and place them on that hex which has an N on it, and that one, so they start there. And it just confirms there that they activate as normal. Then place 4 question marks, and it says roll for the column and row as shown at the top of the map. Okay, so I need to get 4 question marks which are potential enemy positions, and place those by rolling on here. So for the column, we use these red dice printed at the top of the map. So 5 is over here, and then the D6 tells me I just roll a simple D6 to determine how far down. I've got a 2 there. So 5 and 2, so column 5, and then count 2 down, and that is placed there. Okay, so nice and quickly to do the rest. So column 6, and again it says D6, that's the 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 goes down there. And we've got column 3, and it's this time it says D6 plus 1, so the 1 that I've rolled, we add 1 to that and it becomes 2, so it goes on there. And finally, column 4, and it's a 3, and again it says D6 plus 1, so that's going to become a 4, so that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, placed on there. Okay, now you can only have 1 unit and question mark, 1 unit or question mark or LERP team on any particular hex. So if any hex is occupied, you just re-roll. Okay, that's it. Then we roll for, well, the game sort of really starts now, although we're still in the setup phase. We roll for 2 different landing zones. Okay, so this is deciding where my LERP is going to start. And the landing zones are these arrows pointing downwards here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 possible landing zones. Okay, so it says roll for 2 different landing zones. So we usually do those, just get 2 dice, roll those. We've got a 2 and a 3, so they are different. Obviously, if they're the same, you just re-roll one of them. And what I tend to do is put the dice on those landing zones just to remind me what they are. So potentially 2 or 3. So what used to happen when they dropped LERPs off in Vietnam is the helicopter would often come in and make sort of false landings to try and fool the enemy as to exactly where troops were being dropped off and so on. So, they sort of come in and then, do a sort of false landing, then pull off and go somewhere else or whatever, just to confuse the enemy, make it difficult. So this is kind of reflecting that, gives you a bit of a choice. So you've got landing zone 2, landing zone 3. But before we decide, it says roll 1d6 for each jungle hex now adjacent to either landing zone. Okay, so we've got that one, that one, that one, and that one. Okay, these are jungle hexes, obviously with the jungle printed on them, which are adjacent to potential landing zones. You can see there are 4 of those in there. So for each one, I have to roll a d6. If I roll a 1, I place a question mark on that hex. If I roll a 2 or 3, I place a VC4 enemy unit, which will be alert because they've seen the helicopter coming in. Okay, so this is sort of showing that the enemies do see these helicopters coming and going and track down where they go. So I'm working left to right. So that first hex there, I rolled a 4, so that's nothing. And then this hex, I'm going to roll a 1, so I need to place a question mark on that hex. And then I'm going to do this hex here. I've rolled a 2, which means I need to place an alert VC4 unit there. And then here I've rolled a 6, which is nothing. Okay, and only now do I have to make the decision as to which of those 2 landing zones I actually want to get my troops out at. And you can see that gives you a bit of a choice straight away. This one feels a little bit more hemmed in than this one. This one at least has some space up here to get away. So I'm going to put my guys on landing zone 2. Okay, so that's how that works. And then finally, it says roll for the extraction zone. So I'm going to roll that, get a 3, and I'm going to mark. The extraction zones are the arrows pointing upwards. Again, there are 6 of those. And I'm going to mark extraction zone 3 as the extraction point for this mission. All right, so you see straight away there's quite a lot of variety in setup, so it will change how your mission goes. So remember, the objective here is to get to this village and then to capture the officer, move to the extraction zone and extract. Nowhere in the objectives for this mission does it say I need to do anything else. Okay, so some missions are more sort of pure recon missions where you have to sort of reveal all of the question marks and then escape from the map. And there are other things, there's one where you have to destroy a convoy which is moving across the map, and some where you have to destroy checkpoints and various other things. But there are a handful which are pure recon missions. This one, as I say, is a snatch mission where we're trying to get hold of an enemy officer for intelligence purposes. Okay, so the game generally runs each turn with 7 phases, and the phases are printed down left hand side in the sort of dark, or in the yellow numbers in the dark boxes, so nice and clearly. The charts page on this game looks quite complex, but that's because I like to get all the rules on here. Once you've read through the rules once, maybe twice, which are only the usual kind of 15 to 20 pages, and got this page in front of you and how to go, then you'll soon pick it up. And all the reminders of the rules are in here. There's nothing really missing from this page over here. Once you've read the full rules, this will make obviously far more sense. So we've got 7 phases. So the first phase, sorry, there's one more thing I just need to do quickly, is just put the time of day marker up here. Okay, so we have 2 morning or daytime phases, so that's the morning, afternoon effectively, and then we have a night phase here, and then we go back to morning, and we'll explain what all this means as we go. Okay, so that starts at the beginning there. So in the lerp phase, which is the first phase, my phase, it says roll 6 dice, and we always roll 6 dice. Okay, always roll 6 dice in the lerp phase. So take 6 dice, standard d6s, and just roll them. See what we get. I like to just move them out and put them into order, and then we can assess what we can do with these dice. Okay, so we've got 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. Now this is a sort of, the dice dictate what you can do sort of game. However, it is far more flexible than perhaps some of my other games have been in the past. There's a lot more you can do with the dice, and you can usually do most of what you want to do most of the time. There's not a huge frustration factor where you just can't roll what you need. There's 1 or 2 exceptions to that, which just reflect the realities of what was happening in Vietnam, but that's that's how it works. So for the chart over here tells you what you can do here. The point is you can use each dice once in some way. So you can see very quickly I can use a 1 or a 2 to do a fast move, which means you move 1 hex. We'll see what that means when we get there. Any double, this XX means, so you can use these 2 4s, for example, to do a cautious move where I move 1 hex. Use those for the same, that would be a fast move, that 2, for example. A 2 or a 4 I can use to perform a recon action. So again, these can be used for just something different. So you can see how the decisions come. I can cautious move with those 4s, or I could perform 2 separate recon actions if I want to. 3 or 5 is an attack, so you've got an attack there, or potentially attacks here as well. So just a single 3 or a single 5. A single 4 also could put me into Overwatch, where I can sort of set up in a defensive position, ready for the enemy turn, and perform attacks on their turn, which can be helpful. So again, that's a decision. 5 or 6, using a 5 or 6 puts me into cover. So again, there's another decision for a 5. Do I move with those, or do I save one and go into cover with it, attack with the other perhaps, or something? A 6 lets me extract from the map when I'm on the EZ zone. We'll deal with that when we get there. Double 6 allows me to call in an airstrike. Now that is one where sometimes you have to sort of sit and just hope you get a double 6. So there is some mitigation we can do with these dice. I'll show you how that works in a bit. Although if it's night time, note you do need a triple 6 to call in an airstrike. So if the counter is on night, then it's harder to call in an airstrike. The difficulty in calling out, I mean, with 6 dice, you're looking for a double 6 generally, 2 6s in a daytime phase. You've got about a 1 in 3 chance of rolling that. Now that's just really to reflect the fact that, airstrikes were not available just, whenever you wanted in Vietnam. They were not always available. It had to be, obviously a helicopter or an airplane had to be available and ready and safe to get to the area and so on. So there were difficulties in calling these things in. So that just reflects that particular aspect. We can use a 1 to heal up. I haven't got any here, but if somebody's injured and we've got a med pack available, we can do that. 3 or 5 allows us to plant a claymore in an adjacent hex, and if enemies wander into that hex, then they trigger it. 3 or 4 allows us to fill up our water supply by 1 if we are adjacent to a river. An XYZ, which means a run, so for example 2 3 4 or 3 4 5, so we need to use 3 dice for that. We can overwhelm enemies on adjacent hexes only. Now again, hopefully we'll look at that as we get to it. Okay, so there's lots of different things, and you can see there's overlap between all these things. So there are often decisions between, do I do this or do I do that? So it's not going to be very often that you can't do anything, which I think is where the frustration can sometimes come from. It's very much a case of, I can do several things. What's the best to do in the situation on the ground? So it just, it's sort of almost a puzzle factor there for you, but it's certainly not a puzzle game, but there's a slight puzzle factor, and it can lead to quite a lot of analysis as you're trying to work out what the best ways to use your dice. Okay, let's deal with other things as we get there. So let's do this phase. So this is what I've rolled. I'm sorry, I'm merging these out of view, aren't I? Frustratingly for you, no doubt. So we've got 2 3 double 4 double 5. So what have I got to do? I've got to get to the village. Now question marks are positions. We don't know whether what's here. If we recon them, then there's a good chance that they will be either nothing, so sort of false information, or something else. But they could be an enemy unit, but it's likely to be more favourable if we recon it. On the other hand, if they spot us in the enemy phase, so if they see us before we see them, then it's more likely to be an unfavourable result. That's more likely then to be either an NVA or a VC unit. So we have to be aware of those. These unalert units will sort of wander around the map, as will the question marks, and again if they spot us, they will then become alert. We know what they are already, just they will become alert, which means they know where we are then. So alert units, the alert means they know our location. Okay, these guys, these MVA units know that there are US forces around, but they just don't know exactly what we are or where we are, so they're just sort of on patrol or whatever. So we've got to be careful of this alert unit. Alert units will track us more aggressively. They will try to engage, they will attack, as well. So we've got to be careful with those, although it is the weakest unit in the game. There's a VC4, an NVA6 and an NVA8 unit. So it's the weakest, but it can still do us some damage. We're going to be aware of that. So let's think what I'm going to do here. I mean, I could move with a double 4, I can move with a double 5. These are cautious moves, which means I can move into jungle without any adverse effects. I can also fast move, which means I can move, but if I move into jungle with that, then I have to roll on the jungle chart, which can be bad. But I could fast move into here, then I could cautious move, then cautious move. I'd have to check, because I'm crossing a river there, I have to check on the river chart. If I cross at a bridge, I won't need to do that. So I could just try and get up towards the village and ignore these, but I'm just aware that will then come after us, that alert potentially will come after us. Might not, but it may well do. It's often best to deal with these things. Got to be careful, I don't want that to see us. NVA are particularly difficult to get rid of, so rather just try to avoid that if possible. I could recon this and hope of getting rid of that as well, because I've got 4s to do that. Loads to think about every turn. And I think I'm probably not going to play the best game possible here. I'm going to play a game which, gives good examples of what you can do. Now, one thing I could do here is I could, for example, use this double 5 to move. Keep these up here, shall we? Could use this double 5 to move here. In fact, sorry, here into this jungle. So because it's a cautious move, I can move quite happily into this jungle. And then I could use the 2, 3, 4 as an overwhelm action, and that says revealed adjacent enemies only. So I can only use an overwhelm action on an adjacent enemy. It's got to be one that's revealed. So a VC or an NVA. You can't do it on a question mark. So I could overwhelm this VC unit, and the results of that are that I would auto eliminate a VC unit. So that would be destroyed and eliminated. So what overwhelm is reflecting is the fact that LERPs carried really heavy firepower, heavy weapons, and could produce firepower well above the fact that there were just 6 of them, make it feel like there were a lot more of them. So we could do that here. That wouldn't leave me a great deal, just have the 4 left. I could use that to take a defensive overwatch position, for example, or maybe to recon this unit. But then I'm really close to this NVA6. And most ranges in this game are 1 to 2 hexes, but he would then potentially, or they would potentially be able to spot me, and that could be a problem. So I'd have to be careful with that. Okay, so let's put me back here. I think that's dangerous, although it gets rid of this unit, I think it's dangerous. An alternative would be, I could use the 3 to attack. I could use 5s to attack as well, but obviously if you've got a pair, you want to try to keep those if possible, because they allow movement. The 3 I could use to attack this VC unit. The range of an attack is 2 hexes, so I can attack them. Attacking a unit makes them alert, so you don't really want to attack an unalert unit, because they would become alert and then they will track you and attack you and so on. So you've got to be a bit careful with that. You can't attack question marks, games you don't know what they are. But we could attack this alert unit in the hope of either destroying it or more likely pinning it, which means that gives us a chance to get away before it will start to track us. And if we can get far enough away from it, it may then just stand down, as it's called, which means it loses its alert status. So that's another thing we could think about doing here. He's attacking and then just trying to get some distance between us, and particularly this NVA6 unit, which is concerning. So let's see how that works, shall we? Let's do that. Let's take the 3 and perform an attack on this alert unit here. Okay. Now, line of sight in this game is that there isn't really any rules on line of sight. There's only one rule on line of sight, and that is if an intervening hill is directly between you and another unit, you can't see them. So, for example, if the LERP was there, they cannot see this NVA6 because the hill is between them. Other than that, nothing blocks line of sight. So you can see through the jungle, you can see through, because I mean, these hexes are fairly big in scale, but not huge when you've got, scopes to look through and so on. But it does make the attack harder, of course. So generally you can see through villages, you can see through other units and so on. So I can see this unit, I'm going to attack it with this 3. And what that means is I look at the attack chart down here. So this is for attacking, it's for the recon action, and it's for the spotting action. So attacking is what I can do and enemies can do. Recon is what the lerp does, what I do, and spotting is what enemies do when they're trying to find me. So I'm going to use this 3 to attack, and I'm going to attack this alert unit here. So it says dice equals strength. Okay, now the strength of the lerp is 6. Okay, and that's because all 6 of my guys here are fit and healthy. As they get injured, the health goes down. So if Kinsey was injured, then my health would be 5. If Young then got injured, it would drop to 4, and so on. Okay, so the strength of the lerp equals the number of healthy lerp members they have. I should say, if an injured member of the lerp gets hit again or injured again in any way, then they are killed, and that is instant defeat. So the death of any member of the lerp results in defeat. So I'm going to use this 3 to attack. So dice equals strength, so I need 6 dice. And it's better to have some more dice on hand, obviously, otherwise you're going to start using these and get confused about what you had. So I've got 6 dice here, which I can use for my attack. However, I can now look at the special abilities of the 6 guys in my lerp team, and they're all printed on the map here. Okay, and the one I'm going to use here is Robbins, and it says +1 die on attack. Okay, so when I attack, if Robbins is not injured, then I can add another die to my attack dice, which takes it to 7. Okay, and there are other special abilities for each of these guys, but as soon as they're injured, you lose that special ability for that person. At the moment, so I've got 7 dice, and then there are modifiers on here. It says, am I on a hill? No, I'm not. Am I at range 2? Yes, I am. So I lose a dice for that. Okay, so that reflects the fact that there are things between you and them. It doesn't matter what they are, whether they be jungle or units, or they're just, even on a clear hex, obviously in Vietnam there would be rocks and clumps of trees and things. It's just, this is thick jungle. It doesn't matter the fact that I'm 2 away. If I was adjacent, I wouldn't lose that dice, but because I'm range 2, I lose that dice, and 2 is the maximum range you can attack from. So I lose a dice for that. Is the target in a jungle hex? Yes, they are. So I lose a dice there. Is the target in a village? No. Is the target in cover? No. In fact, only the lerp can be in cover, so that's for when they're attacking me. Is the attacker pinned? Again, for this one, in fact, only enemies can be pinned, but so I can't be, but it could be the other way if they're attacking me. And are we at night? If we're at night, I'd lose 2 more dice, so attacking at night is harder, obviously. No, it's not night, and therefore I don't lose those. So I have 5 dice to roll for this attack, and nice and straightforwardly, all I need is 6s. 6s are hits. So let's roll, and I'll show you what I've got there. Yeah, pretty miserable. I've got 3 2s, 3 and a 5. That's pretty unlucky. Chances are were probably just in my favour that I would have rolled a 6 there. I didn't. Okay, had I rolled a 6, then this unit would be pinned, as would any unit. So I was attacking NVA 6 or an NVA 8. They would be pinned if I get 1 6. If I get 2 6s, a VC unit would be eliminated. 2 or more, a VC unit would be eliminated, but an NVA unit would still only be pinned. Okay, these NVA units are larger, they're too big to be destroyed by the lerp, and as were the realities in Vietnam. The lerp is not there to destroy units. I'm only attacking this unit because it knows that I'm there. The idea is I'm trying to be stealthy, and what happened generally in Vietnam is that if the lerp did get into gun battles, then they would try to pin back the enemy, make an escape, and possibly call in an airstrike. So that's the only way of destroying an NVA unit. So we've missed that attack. That 3 is used, and therefore it's gone. I can't use that for anything else. So that leaves me in a slight conundrum. Do I still now try to make my escape? Because remember, I could move with the 2. I can move with these 2 doubles. Do I attack again using a 5, which then means I lose the ability to move with it? I also like to recon this question mark before it sees me, because chances are it wouldn't be anything if I did recon it, but I'm not going to do any of that, I don't think. What I'm going to try and do is move away. So I'm going to use this 2 to conduct a fast move. Remember, a 1 or a 2. I can fast move into the clear hex quite safely. In fact, very safely. I don't have to do anything else. Only if I fast move into a jungle hex, do I have to roll then on the jungle chart, which is this here. It's a jungle chart. And if I then rolled, I have to roll a d6. If I rolled a 1 or 3, I would actually run into a trap. I'm sure you're aware that in Vietnam they like to set traps for the allies. But I'm not running into a jungle, I'm running into a clear hex, so I don't have to roll on that chart. Now, I've then got 2 potential cautious moves, so I'm going to use one of those to cautious move into this jungle here. That means I don't have to roll on the jungle chart because I've done a cautious move into there. And then I'm going to use the double 5 to do another cautious move into this jungle, but... Or am I? Let me just think about that. If I do that, I have to roll on the river chart, and that's here, this blue chart, and that I'd roll a d6. If I got in this mission, these charts all change per mission, by the way. This is not applicable to all the missions, only this one. If I roll a 1, there would be an undercurrent or a fast-moving river. Somebody would get into trouble, and we'd lose 1 strength, so 1 person would get injured. And I'd decide randomly by rolling a d6 who that was, because they're all numbered, you see. If I roll a 2 or 3, then because of fast water, I actually fail to cross. Okay, and 1, I would lose a strength, but I'd still get across the river. 2 to 3 means I'd fail. I'd stay in this hex and lose the 2 dice I'd used to move. 4, 5, or 6 would be a successful cross with no sort of downside, if you like. Alternatively, I could actually just stay here and use one of these 5s to take cover. Remember, 5 or 6 is take cover. I think I'm going to do it. In fact, what I'm going to do, because I haven't rolled any dice, I'm going to take this back 1 stage, because what I'm actually going to do now is when I'm here, I'm going to fast move to there, which I did, and then I'm going to use one of these 5s to attack again on this VC unit. So as before, I'm going to take 6 dice because I'm 6 strength. I'm going to add 1 because Robbins is uninjured. I'm then going to lose 1 because they are 2 hexes away. And I'm going to lose another 1 because they're in a jungle hex. So again, I'm going to attack with 5 dice on this VC Con unit. And this time I have been successful. I've got 1 6. I haven't eliminated them, but what I have done is pinned them, which is useful. Okay, so I'm going to put a pinned marker on that unit. I'm left then with a 5 and 2 4s. I'm going to cautious move into the jungle here with the double 4, and then the 5 I'm going to take cover, and I think that might be a fairly sensible plan. Okay, so I didn't attempt the river cross this time. There are bridges, and this map there's only 1 there. If you cross at a bridge, obviously you don't have to do that. You can move freely across the bridge. Most maps there are more than 1 bridge. And that's the end of my phase. You can see, I mean, obviously it wouldn't take that long normally, but there are lots of decisions to make, lots of things to think about, factors to take into account. Probably should mention Kinsey here. I didn't really think about taking this into account. I don't think I really needed to here, but for Kinsey, his special ability is to re-roll a double once. Okay, and that means during the lerp phase. And it doesn't mean when you're rolling to attack or anything like that, just when you roll your 6 dice. So, when I rolled those 6 dice and I got a double 5, didn't I, and a double 4, I could have used Kinsey's ability only once per lerp phase. At any point during that phase, as long as I hadn't used those dice yet for an action, I could have re-rolled those 2 4s or re-rolled those 2 5s. So you can see there's some mitigation. That can be useful if, for example, I'd rolled 1 6 and desperately wanted an airstrike. If I'd rolled a double 4, I could then have used Kinsey's ability to re-roll those 2 4s, hoping to get another 6, which then would have allowed at least a daytime airstrike if I needed it. So there's a bit of mitigation there for Kinsey. Okay, that's me done. So the next phase then is the village phase, very quick phase. That just says if the lerp is in a village hex. Well, I'm not. There's only 1 village hex here. It's there. So only if I'm not, I can pass through villages freely, but if I stop in a village at the end of my turn, then in the village phase, I have to roll on the village chart. That generally gives good and bad things. In fact, slightly different for this mission because a large part of it, if I roll a 3, 4, 5, 6 in the village phase, then I would catch the enemy officer, which I'm after for the mission, of course. But usually you can either get injured or you can gain supplies depending on the role. So they tend to be risky, but sometimes needs must, and you decide you have to go into a village to try and get some meds or water or something. So then we move to phase 3, which is the first enemy. There are 3 enemy phases depending on the type of units we got. So phase 3, this is for unpinned, alert, NVA and VC units. So units which have been revealed as NVA, VC, and who are unpinned and alert. We don't have any of those on this map. Okay, these are not alert, and this is not unpinned, it's pinned. So this is where this alert unit would have moved, but because I pinned them, they won't activate. Say moved, I mean activate. They won't activate in this phase. If they had, they'd have rolled 4 dice and done all kinds of things, probably chased after us and attacked. Because I've pinned them back, they don't activate in that phase. They activate, so nothing does in phase 3. So we move to phase 4, and here we see that we're going to activate pinned, alert, NVA and VC units. Okay, pinned. Just get a bit more light on proceedings. Okay, so we're going to activate pinned, alert units here. So this unit here is going to activate here, but now it says roll 2d6. So straight away you can see that by pinning them, they're now rolling 2 dice instead of 4, and their actions are different. Okay, for example, there is no move action, so because I've pinned them, they will not chase me, which is really helpful. Because of course I'm out of range now, I'm 3 hexes away, which means they can't attack either. So let's roll their 2 dice and see what they get. They get a 1 and a 6. Okay, so this unit here gets a 1 and 6. What you put them into order, and you deal with them in that way. So deal with the 1 first. The 1 says attack, but only at range 1 to 2. Well, I'm 3 away, so they can't do that. So we don't need to worry about that. And 6 is a stand down order. Okay, that says if they are more than 2 hexes away from the lerp, then they become unalert and unpinned. Okay, so they lose their pinned marker and they lose their alert status. So I'm going to swap out the VC4 alert for a VC4. So you can see straight away how pinning that unit was a really good idea, and it was worth doing that second attack to do that. So it restricted what they can do. Generally, pinned units will, they might attack, but even if it had attacked, of course, you probably recall that on the attack chart, if the attacker is pinned, they lose 2 dice. So straight away he would have lost 2 dice on his attack. And he's only attacking with 4 dice anyway because he's strength 4. So pinning him back was a great idea, and it reflects exactly what lerps used to do. We got spotted on the landing. We pinned them and we disappeared into the jungle. They've now lost us. That's what the basically stand down means. They've lost sight of us. They've lost a track, and they're still looking for us, but in a less aggressive way. So that's them done. What I tend to do is I'm just going to put a little cube on there just for myself, because I'm talking. I'm going to forget who's done what. But once you're doing these quickly, you can remember fairly easily who's done what. But that that has now acted. That has now activated. Won't activate again on this turn. We go to phase 5 then, and this is where all the unalert, NVA, VC, and all the question marks act. So this is all these other things. Okay, so unalert units and question marks. So we've got 5 question marks and 2 unalert units. They will now act. And what we do is, it says at the top here, within each phase, activate units nearest to the lerp first, then in order of strength, then player choice. So we take of all the ones we're now activating, the one that's nearest to the lerp is this one, and they will do, in phase 5 here, these things will do 2 things. Okay, first they will move. So we get one dice, we roll that dice, it gets a 5, and then we simply look on this little compass up here, and we see that 5 is down there, so it will try to move down that way, and it can't because that would be off map, so it doesn't move. And then secondly, it will try to spot, but the range for spotting is 2 hexes, 1 or 2 hexes, and we are 3 hexes away, so that will not try to spot us, and that's it, simple as that. The next nearest unit is this NVA 6, again, roll a dice, it gets a 2, so it will move up to the northeast as dictated by that, and then try to spot us, but it's too far away, so it won't do that. Next one is going to be these 2. They're equidistant away from us, so the strongest goes first. So this NVA unit gets a 3, tries to move down here, can't because there's already a question mark there, so it won't do that, and it can't spot us because we are more than 2 hexes away. This one rolls a 6, so it moves up there, again can't spot us. This guy here gets a 5, so it moves down that way. This question mark here gets a 2, pushes him up there, and this question mark here gets a 5, which pushes him down there. Simple as that. So they're all done. None of those could reach us with the spotting, so we didn't need to do that. Then we move on to phase 6, which is the end of turn event. They're generally nasty. There's only one that's good for us if we roll a 6. We've rolled a 1, and that is a patrol boat. Okay, so on the river here, this is sort of enemies patrolling up and down. It says, if the lerp is adjacent to the river, yes we are, unfortunately, and not in cover. Fortunately, we are in cover. So although these end of turn events are obviously random and they can be a bit nasty, for many of them, we can at least control how they will affect us. So by taking cover next to that river, and by the way, you can only take cover when you're on a jungle hex. You can't take cover in a clear hex. It does say that on the chart here. By taking cover, we have protected ourselves against patrol boats. So this patrol boat passes by because we are, dug into the jungle, deep cover in the jungle. So we're fine. So we avoid the effects of the patrol boat. Had we not been in cover, they would have rolled 4d6 or 3d6 because we're in a jungle hex. They'd roll 3d6, and for every 6 they rolled would have been a hit. So it can be nasty, but we avoided that. And then finally, the last phase is simply the end of turn phase where we move the time on to the afternoon. Okay. We also lose any Overwatch we haven't used. We don't have any of those, so that's fine. And if the timer goes to the next day, back to here, in other words, to the morning, this droplet under here, this water droplet, means we would have to consume 1 water. And if we don't have any water, one member loses 1 strength, and we roll randomly to see who that is. Dehydration, in other words. And then we go back to the next turn. So let's try and speed this up a little bit now. As ever on these videos, the first turn always takes a good half hour or so, but it does, each turn actually takes a couple of minutes once you get going. So I'm going to go a little bit quicker now, I hope. So let's start again. Back to us, we roll our 6d6. And this time we've got 3 3s, we've got a 1, 3 3s, and we have got a double 6 here, so we've got a chance for an airstrike if we want to call it in. Now an airstrike has to be performed on a revealed unit, so again, not question marks. It has to be a revealed unit, so a VC or an MVA. You can also airstrike checkpoints, but we don't have any of those on here yet. And some missions have them at the start and so on, so you can also destroy checkpoints. But the target has to be exactly 2 hexes away. Okay, so in other words, we have to be able to see them. Remember, our range of view is 2 hexes max, but you can't airstrike adjacent hexes. It's deemed to be unsafe and too close to you. So you have to be 2 hexes away. So we could, for example, let's move this away. We could actually airstrike this VC unit here, which would remove them from the map, but we would have to move back towards them to be 2 hexes away. And I don't really want to go in that direction, and I might as well carry on heading north. It's particularly useful to airstrike NVA units. In fact, it's the only way of removing NVA units from the map. You can pin them with attacks, but you remember you can't destroy NVA units, simply too many of them. And these reflect sort of 20 to 50 guys who are, trained, organised, well-armed and so on. So we can pin them though and escape, but these just need to be avoided. But we can eliminate them with airstrikes. But again, I'd have to get close to do that. See if I can do that. I could cross the river with the fast move, and then I could move into the jungle with the double 3. I could then airstrike this unit away. Should we try to do? Let's try to do that just to exemplify, certain things you can do in this game. Again, I probably need more time to think whether that's actually the best thing to do. But let's do it anyway. So I'm going to try to fast move with this 1. Now, when I move or try to move, I lose the cover marker. Okay, so that's when you lose cover when you try to move. So even if I fail to cross this river and I have to return here, I've still lost that cover, and I've come out of cover. I've tried to cross the river, I've lost the cover. So I'm going to try and fast move into this clear hex, because remember, a fast move into a jungle is always a bit dangerous. So I have to roll on the river cross chart, and I'm hoping for something fairly high. I've got a 6, in fact, and a 4, 5 and 6 is not on the chart, which means it's simply a successful cross. So I've crossed the river and I'm into this clear hex here, and that's the fast move dice used. I'm then going to use the double 3 to move into this jungle hex, which leaves me a 3 double six. And whilst I think of it, I'm going to use this 3 because it's not particularly useful. I mean, I could plant a claymore, I don't really need to do that yet. I can attack, but I don't really want to attack unalert units. You know, this unit is not aware of my location, neither is it. I mean, you know, I could attack this unit, I don't want to do that. And I didn't want to attack when I was here. I could have attacked this VC4, but again, I don't want to re-alert them, so I didn't want to do that. So what I'm actually going to use this 3 for is to fill the water. So I'm actually, because I'm adjacent to a river, I'm going to use that 3 while I've got chance just to top my water up by 1 to there. All right, and each water, of course, lasts 3 turns because it takes 3 turns for this timer to go around to the next day. So, you know, that now gives me quite a few turns to play with before I have to worry about water again. Some missions have rivers which are less conveniently placed, so sometimes it's a bit more of an issue. So now, lastly, then I've got this double 6. I can call in an airstrike. It's daytime, so double 6 will do. I don't need 3 6s. And the airstrike, select a revealed unit or checkpoint 2 hexes away. I'm going to pick this guy and eliminate that target. Okay, so boom. In comes, I don't know, helicopter gunship or, you know, traditional sort of fixed wing airstrike or whatever, but that is gone, which is useful. It clears this top area a little bit for me. And that's me done. Now, what I haven't managed to do there, of course, is get into cover. So I'm a little bit at risk from various events and things, but we'll take that risk and see what happens. I'm also, of course, very proximate to these 2 question marks, which may well have a go at spotting me, and you know, maybe these as well. So let's see what happens. We'll slip through then to the river chart. Sorry, the village phase. Well, I'm not in a village, so ignore that. Then we're into the enemy phase. There are no alert units on the board now, so there is nothing in phase 3, nothing in phase 4. So phase 5, drop through to the unalert question marks and other units. So nearest to me are these 2 question marks, so I get to do the same strength, so I get to choose, so it doesn't really matter which goes first. So let's do this top one first. It rolls a 5, which means it moves down in this direction. And then it tries to spot. It's 2 hexes away, so it can spot. And the spotting works the same as recon and the same as attacking. So we look at this chart down the bottom here. So this is the attack, recon and spotting chart. The number of dice equals the strength of the unit. Now question marks are strength 5. We don't know what they are, but I'm giving them a 5 to make them reasonably good at spotting and also to encourage the LERP to recon them. You know, I say this is a slightly different mission. My key is to get here, but in most missions you'll be wanting to recon these question marks, and it's a good way of getting rid of them. If you recon a question mark, there's a good chance of it being all clear. Whereas if they spot us, as I said before, that could be something dangerous. So they get 5 dice, basic, which is their basic strength, and then we do the run through those modifiers again. He's not, and it's when it refers to an attacker now, it means obviously the spotter. He's not on a hill, so he doesn't get a bonus dice for that. He's at range 2, so he loses a die for that. I'm in the jungle, so he loses a die for that. I'm not in a village. I'm not in cover, unfortunately, because that would have meant another die gone. So you can see another benefit of being in cover there. He's not pinned. Question marks can't be pinned because they can't be attacked. And it's not nighttime, unfortunately, either, which means he doesn't lose any more dice. So he's got 3 dice. So it's a fairly, you know, there's a pretty good chance of him being successful. He needs a 6 for a successful spotting action. And unfortunately for me, he has got a 6. He's actually got 2, but that doesn't matter for spotting. It's just, you know, just needs a 6. So has been successful. So what does that mean? Well, let's look. Spotting. Okay, 6 for success, it says. So if the spotter is already an NVA or VC, then they would become alert. Well, it's not. It's a question mark. And then it says, sorry about that. Urgent doorbell call. Right. And then it says, if the spotter is a question mark, which it is, then roll 2d6. So we take 2d6 and roll them. And we look on this little chart. So if we roll 2 to 5, it would be an NVA 8 unit. If we roll 6 to 8, it's an NVA 6 unit. If it's a 9, it's a VC4. And if it's a 10 plus, it's actually civilians, which brings us to something else. But we'll look at that if and when it comes to it. So you can see this is a nasty chart. Okay, most of the time, it's going to be something bad. We've rolled an 8 here, so it's actually an NVA 6 unit that has spotted us. Okay. And then it says, all alert. So it's also alert. It's seen us, it knows we're there, it knows our location. So we now have an NVA 6 unit, which is alert. Remember, that's going to chase us and it's going to shoot us. And we've got to be careful with that. Now, next it says here, Overwatch in brackets. And whenever it says that, it means we could use an Overwatch token. So if we'd rolled a 4 in our alert phase and used one of those 4s to take an Overwatch marker, we could now use that and we could perform an attack on this unit now, which would have a good chance of pinning them. Unfortunately, I haven't got any Overwatch and therefore I can't do that. Then what happens is, finally here, that unit tries to attack us straight away. Okay, it spotted us and it instantly opens fire. All right, so it will now attack. This is an NVA 6 unit, so it gets 6 dice. Basic dice. Okay, and the modifiers say it's not on a hill, it's at range 2, so it loses 1 dice. I'm in the jungle, so it loses another dice. I'm not in a village, I'm not in cover again, unfortunately. He's not pinned either, unfortunately, which is the one thing I could have done, of course. If I'd attacked with Overwatch, then a successful hit would have pinned this NVA unit. Remember, I can't remove it with an attack, but I could have pinned it, and that would have meant 2 more dice being taken away here. So Overwatch can be really useful. It's a big difference between 2 and 4 dice. And it's not nighttime either, so unfortunately they get the 4 dice here. Now for each 6 rolled, they will inflict 1 hit on my lerp. So I'm going to roll those dice, and they have rolled a 6 and 3 3s. So that means they've inflicted 1 hit. And whenever the lerp suffers an injury, whether that be, through a snake bite or a trap or being hit, dehydration, whatever it might be, you roll a die, and that determines who takes the injury. Okay, so we've been attacked, and Robbins is now injured. Okay, if we suffer another injury and we roll the die and it's Robbins again, then he would be killed and the game would be over. Okay, so the more injuries I get, the more chance I'm going to lose the game when I suffer my next injury. So we've got to be careful. I have meds, I can heal him up, but that takes effort in itself. So we're going to see what happens there. So they have attacked and inflicted 1 injury on us. Okay, and that was, of course, only the first one of their turn, wasn't it? So this question mark now is going to activate. It gets a 4, which means it wants to move straight down, but it can't because this NVA is there, unfortunately for us. So he's now in a position where he can also try to spot us. And so again, 5 dice. Okay, they're 2 away. I'm in a jungle. They're spotting with 3 dice. This time, fortunately, they do not see us. They do not see us. Next nearest are these 2 units. The NVA 6 is the strongest, so let's see what he does. He gets a 5, which takes him down there, which is good, because he's still 3 away, so he won't try to spot us. This VC4 unit gets a 4, so moves straight down there. This question mark here gets a 1, moves straight up, but it's still too far away to spot, so that's good. So we just got these 2 over here. They're probably about equidistant, the same strength. Let's go with this one first. The 3 takes him down in that direction, and this unit gets a 6, which takes him up into this jungle unit. Remember, this here is dictating at this stage where they move. Okay, so I wouldn't say we got off lightly, but at least we're still in there. We need to think about, we really could do with an airstrike here. Unfortunately, it's going to be nighttime. That's the end of their phases. So we then drop through to phase 6, end of turn event. That's a 3, which is a truck. If the lerp is on a road hex, well, I'm not. Okay, these are all road hexes here, obviously. Okay, doesn't include villages. It does say that here, not a village. we would roll 3d6, and for each 6 we would lose 1 strength. Again, a truck comes by, you know, so a machine gun or troops on the back or whatever firing at us, but that hasn't happened because we're not on a road hex. End of turn phase means we now move into the night phase. We lose any overwatch, we haven't got any. And we come back to us. So again, still roll 6 dice. There's always 6 dice at this point. It just says roll 6 dice. It's not related to strength, just a coincidence that it's 6 and our strength tends to be 6. So it's not that we lose dice as we go. We lose dice when we try to attack or perform a recon action, because remember we use the basic strength as our number of dice. Also, of course, because Robbins is injured, we now lose his bonus, so we lose that +1 die on an attack. So we maybe need to think about fixing him up. We've got the meds to do it. Okay, we're nowhere near an airstrike here, and we probably were never going to be because it's night time. We'd need 3 6s. It's doable. I've done it before, but it's particularly with Kinsey's reroll, but there's just no chance here, so we don't need to worry about that. So we got to think about what to do with this. We probably need to attack them and try to pin them back and sort of get over here somewhere or something. But let's see what we've got. We can use a 1 to heal. So it says heal 1 member of the LERP, but it does use up a med, obviously, and that obviously thereby increases the strength by 1 because we remove the injury. So we could do that. It's worth pointing out at this point, Watson is the medic in the team, and he can actually use a 6 to heal as well. So instead of using a 1, he can use a 6. Just gives a bit more flexibility. Obviously, once he's injured, then only 1s can be used to heal. That's also a fast move, of course, so that could be useful here to get me over here, but when we think about that, the rest is just not looking particularly friendly. It's all, there's some moves here. There's an attack. I suppose we could do that. Yeah, let's do it. Let's start taking some risks. Let's use the 5 to attack this unit here. Okay, so we use this 5 to attack this unit. So our basic strength, no, hang on, let's think about that. Yeah, let's heal up first. Before we attack, we might as well heal. So we use the 1 to heal Robbins. Okay, so we remove Robbins' injured status and we push down 1 med. So we use a med pack to heal Robbins. And then we're going to attack this NVA unit, okay, which means we've got full strength. But not only that, of course, we can now use Robbins' bonus. So we get the 7 dice to attack this. They're 2 away, so we lose 1 dice. It's also night time, so we lose 2 more, which is a nuisance, but they're not in jungle, so we stick with 4 dice. We've got a reasonable chance of success, and we've done it. Yeah, we've done that, we've got a 6. So that NVA unit is now pinned back, which is really useful. In fact, it's crucial, really. You don't want an NVA unit chasing you down. Which leaves me these 2 doubles here, and I think I'm just going to use those. And what I'm actually going to do, and this may be daft, I'm going to use those to move into the village. I'm going to use those to move into the village. Because I have to do that to achieve this objective. So that's the end of my turn. So the village phase, then it says, it's phase 2, remember. LERP in village hex. Yes, it is. So now we get to roll a d6. Now, if I roll a 1 or 2, I get attacked from secret tunnels and I lose a strength. Remember, that means rolling to see who gets injured. If I roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6, then I achieve the objective and I capture the enemy officer who's wandering around that village somewhere. Okay, so this is quite an important roll for me. And I've rolled a 1. Oh, damn. Okay, so rolled a 1, which means I'm going to have to hang around in this village for another turn somehow. And so I suffer an injury, been attacked from a secret tunnel. I've rolled a 1 again, which means it's Kinsey who is injured. That means I cannot now use his reroll ability until I heal him up. So that's not good. Moving through then into the phases for the enemy, there are no unpinned alert enemies, but there is 1 pinned alert enemy here, of course. So they go first. 2d6, they get 3 and 6. 3 says unpin. So 3, 4, and 5 simply unpins them. And then 6 is stand down, but unfortunately, remember, they will only do that if we are out of sight. But because we are or rather if they're more than 2 hexes away. So because we are 2 hexes away, they won't do that. So they become unpinned, but they're still alert, which is bad. We'll probably have to attack them again next time. Then we drop through to the other types of units. So nearest to us are these two, so they're the same. We'll just choose this one up here, then gets a 3, so moves down that way, which is good. This gets a 5, so shuffles down there, which is also good. So they're not coming towards us, which is excellent. This guy here gets a 3, moves down there. This one gets a 4, moves down there. Wow, this one gets a 6, can't move where he wants to go, and this one gets a 1, so he moves straight up. Okay. That could have been a lot worse. At least they're down here, and the extraction zone is there. So I've just got to. This is the main problem up here, obviously, and potentially that one maybe. End of turn event is a 6, and that is actually the good one for me. It says roll d6. Okay, so let's see what we get. It's a 6. So 1 to 4 is no event. 5 is a water hole, get 3 water, and 6 is a natural recovery. +1 strength, and that means, it clarifies in the rules, that natural recovery means no meds required. So Kinsey was, maybe dive for cover and banged his head and knocked himself out, whatever. He's actually recovered from whatever injury he had without medical assistance, or managed to patch it up himself or whatever. You create the story as you go. So that's saved as a med pack. That's really helpful. And that's quite rare to get that. I rolled a 6 for the event and then a 6 for the particular +1 strength. So quite lucky. But that's come at a great time for us. End of turn phase then means it becomes morning, and this is where we have to consume water supplies or suffer a 1 injury, and we do that by moving the water down by 1. We're now on our last water, which means we've got 3 turns left before we need some more water. Don't really want to have to come back to the river, so I'd like to get this mission finished ASAP. Back to me then. We need to stay in this village because we've got to get the right roll on this village chart. This is where we could really do with an airstrike. We haven't got that yet, but we might be able to manipulate one. Okay, we've fallen a bit lucky here, I think, in some ways, because we've got this 6, but obviously we need double 6 for an airstrike. We have got a double here, which I could re-roll using Kinsey's ability, because remember he healed up, naturally healed up, so I can use his ability, and I think I need to do that. So praying for a 6, and I get a double 4. Not the best. Not the best at all. Okay, so this is one of those rare times in this game where I'm not going to be able to use too many of these dice, simply because I want to stay on this hex. And that's quite, as I say, it's quite rare that you'll need to do that. Usually you'll be on the move the whole time, so I'd be using these things to move and do all sorts of other things. What I can't take cover in a village. I get benefit from being in a village, which is 1 - 1 die. I can't, dig into deep cover, which you can only do in a jungle, so I can't take cover. I'd tell you what I could do. I could use my clay more. I'm going to use this, or do I want to just attack? I could have done with another 3 or 5. I think I'm probably best just using that to attack, actually. Let's use the 5 to attack this NVA. I need to pin them back. So, as before, I get a 6 dice because I've got full 6 strength. I get a bonus die for Robbins and his heavy weapons. I lose 1 because they are 2 hexes away, but that's all, because they're not in a jungle hex. It's not night time, so I still get 6 dice there, and I have got a hit. Okay, I've got a hit. I've got 1 6 there, so that's a pin on this NVA unit. Oops, sorry, wobbling the camera there. So this unit is now pinned. And then what I could do is, don't need that, can't really do anything with that. So with these 3 4s, I think this is quite rare to do this, but usually you might take 1 Overwatch if you've got a spare 4 at the end, but I'm actually going to take 3 Overwatch markers with these 4s, which will just help me if I get attacked. Okay, or could, yeah, would help me if I get spotted by a question mark or whatever. Well, let's see how it goes. Well, that's me done. So the village phase then, roll on there, get a 3 this time. And a 3, you'll see, 3 to 6, enemy officer caught. So I have now achieved the objective, okay? There's no particular marker for that or anything, but it's pretty easy to remember, isn't it? You know, there's only one objective, that's all I've got to do, and I've done it. So I've got the enemy officer. So next turn, I'm running for this extraction zone. Falling through to the enemy phases, unpinned alert, there aren't any. Pinned alert, there's just this NVA unit, so it rolls 2 dice. It gets a 2 and a 5. So 2 is alert, and what an alert action does is that this alert unit will try to alert all the enemies around it. So if there were any question marks or unalert enemies in any adjacent hexes around it, they would all become alerted and question marks would be revealed using the spotting chart. Remember, that's the nasty one down here. So they would all convert. So, you know, where you've got little clumps of enemies like down here, it can be quite nasty. So, you know, if there was an alert enemy sort of next to these and it did an alert action, it would, you know, convert this into an alert unit and reveal this question mark using the spotting chart. So that can be quite nasty, an alert action, but there is nothing adjacent to it, so it won't do that. You know, sort of shouting out, you know, pointing out our location to all his friends and so on, but we can't do that. 5 then is unpin, so again they lose the pin marker, and you can see how, you know, consistently pinning back these enemies is crucial. And if you, you know, if you miss that attack, then things become tricky. Not sure why this camera keeps wobbling. Can't really work out why that is. Apologies for that. Okay, so that's them. They've unpinned, so they'll be ready to chase us next turn. Then we come to these other units. What's nearest? This is nearest here, so let's go. That gets a 5, moves down onto this hill, and the one over here gets a 1, tries to move straight up, can't. Fortunately, they both can't spot us. Then we're onto this NVA 6 unit. He gets a 3, but can't move that way. This unit gets a 6, moves up there, and this unit gets a 3, moves down there, and this one gets a 6, moves up there. Okay, so the south of the map here is flooded. Fortunately, I got out of that pretty quick, and the setup was just worked so that that was the case. But we've had problems up here, and we're still dealing with them. So let's see how that goes. Then we drop through to the end of turn event. We've rolled a 1. That's a patrol boat. We're not adjacent to the river, so don't have to worry about that. End of turn phase moves us to the afternoon, and we lose our Overwatch tokens, which in fact we didn't need in the end, but were there as a kind of safety net. So back to us. And we've got a chance here now, I think. So we're going to roll all our dice and really just want to travel as quickly and safely as we can. So we've got this 1. I'm going to use that to fast move. Okay, I'm going to fast move into this empty space here. I'm then going to seems unnecessarily dangerous to get too close to these question marks, but I could do I want to re-roll? I'm going to re-roll these 2 5s using Kinsey's ability. I could have moved here, but I'd be right out in the open and within fairly easy spotting range, particularly this one would certainly try to spot me wherever it moves, and even if it didn't move, it was so that's dangerous. So I'm going to re-roll these 2 5s. Okay, I get a 1 and a 3. It's not really what I wanted. Oh, actually, that's better, isn't it? That's better. So I'm going to use the 1 to move here, and then I'm going to use the double 3 to move into this jungle cautiously, and then I'm going to use the five. Yeah, silly that. I didn't think about that. Yeah, okay, so I've messed up a bit there. I should have used the 5 when I was in the village to attack this unit and try to pin them back. So that's going to go to waste now. I'm going to use the 5 or 6. They both do the same for cover. And so I'm going to use the 6 to take cover in this jungle. But so I've got the 5 left over. Oh, I could actually use that to plant a claymore. Yeah, let's do that. And let's just guess where one of these units might move. It doesn't really matter. Let's pop that there. So you put a claymore in any adjacent vacant hex. So pop that in there. And if that question mark happens to move down, it would trigger the claymore and actually destroy the question mark. It's one of the only ways of removing question marks other than reconning them. I haven't really managed to do a recon action in this, because I didn't roll. I really wanted to recon that question mark and, come in the north here, away from there, and recon this, but I didn't roll any 2s or 4s, which is, when you think with 6 dice, and I re-rolled 2 of them, and I still didn't roll either a 2 or a 4. That's not going to happen very often at all. So just didn't get a chance to recon. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. So village phase, I'm not in a village anymore, I don't need to do that. Move on to the enemy phase. There are no, oh there are now, sorry, yes, there is one unpinned alert enemy, so he will roll 4 dice, which is really why I should have pinned him back, but there we go. Now, he's got 2 and then 3, 4, 4. The 2 is a move. Okay, so what he'll do is move 1 hex nearer to the lerp. So first thing is he'll only move if he can move nearer, which means not, by going round things and so on. It's got to be as the crow flies. He has to reduce the number of hexes between himself and the lerp by 1. Okay, so he'll only move if he can do that. Can he do that? Yes, he can. And he can do that by moving into that hex or that hex. Okay, they're the only 2 things that do. Now, if one of those was blocked, it had another enemy in it, for example, or a checkpoint, which enemies can't move onto, then it would have to move into the other one. Because he has this choice of 2, both of which are moving it nearer to the lerp, because it's reducing the distance between them, then there is just a fairly simple tie break mechanism within this instruction itself. So in square brackets, it says that he would prefer to move into a hill, well, neither of those are hills, then into a jungle. So the tie break says he'll move into the jungle. Just to complete that would then be a village if there was one, and failing that he will move into the hex which is furthest up, and that's from my point of view. So for example, if these were both jungle hexes, then none of those other tiebreakers would solve it, so he would still move into that hex because it's the one furthest up the map. Okay. So he moves there, and then he wants to attack, because 3s and 4s are all attacks. So you can see that could have been, and if we were here somewhere, that could have been fatal to get 3 attacks from an NVA 6 unit. Fortunately, we're out of range, so we don't get that. Okay, so that's him done. We have no unpinned, and we have no pinned alert NVA or VC. So we move through to the normal, the other unalert and question marks. So let's go with these 2 first. It's my choice. Let's do the top one first, just so I can recall easily what's what. He gets a 2, so wants to move out that way to the top right. He can't do that, so he stays where he is. Unfortunately, from there he can potentially spot me. He gets 5 dice because that's his strength. He loses 1 because I'm 2 hexes away. He loses another 1 because I'm in the jungle, and he loses another 1 because I'm in cover. So just spotting with 2 dice, and he has actually spotted me. Oh, that's unlucky. So he has actually spotted me. He's got 1 6. So he is now going to be revealed. So again on the spotting chart, if the spotter is a question mark, we roll 2d6. I've got an 11. That's good. Obviously higher the better. I tend to try and make all my charts higher the better. So you're always rolling for high numbers. Just makes sense, doesn't it? So on a 10 plus, so quite unusual, but it's 10 plus, civilians appear. Okay, so we replace this question mark with civilians. So local population, in other words. Okay. Now we have this marker here included in the counters. You can use any old marker because it's only temporary, as there's a reminder on there. It's only just to put there whilst we consider what's happening, and then it'll be removed from the board. So we have to now perform potentially a hearts and minds test. In other words, are these particular civilians, locals, whatever, call them what you will, indigenous population, are they pleased to see the US forces? They've seen us by accident, we've run into them somehow. Are they pleased to see us? And we would roll the number of dice equal to the number of strength points we have. So in our case, it would be 6. And if we get any 6, then we pass that test, and they disappear. Okay, because they're happy. Happy is probably a bit strong, but they are neutral. Let's say they've seen us, but they just wander off and carry on with what they're doing. If we fail that test, then the civilians perform an alert action that we talked about earlier, and they would alert any enemy units around them. So that would be any non-alert NVA and VC, or any question marks, and they again would be revealed using the spotting chart. Okay, so it can be nasty. If you reveal, if something spots you here, say, if I was here and they'd spotted me and it was a civilian, then we'd have to do a hearts and minds test. If we failed that, then they would alert these two units. That would become alert and that would be revealed. So we have to be a bit careful with that. In this case, we don't really have to do the hearts and minds. Just for completion, you would take your 6 dice. There are no modifiers to that. Roll the dice. We actually got a 6 anyway, so we passed that. The civilians disappear. And if we failed it and they performed an alert action, they would still then disappear, which is why the marker is always temporary. So that's that done. This unit here gets a 5, which means he moves down there. Now that's lucky because he's moved out of range. He gets a 1, moves up there. This unit gets a 3, moves down there. This unit gets a 2, moves up there. This unit gets a 4, doesn't move anywhere. End of turn event is a 6. Another good one for us. We roll a 3. It's actually no event. End of turn becomes night. We remove any overwatch. We haven't got any. That's fine. Comes back to us. And I think we might just be successful here. So we roll our 6 dice, and all we're looking for really here is a 6. We're almost certainly going to be able to move somehow. Yeah, we've got a double 3, which allows us to move. We're going to lose our cover there, aren't we? We're going to move into the extraction zone with that double 3, and then we're going to use the 6. Remember here, look, a single 6 is the extract action. If the lerp is on the EZ hex and the objectives have been achieved, which they have, we snatch the officer, then the game ends in victory. Woo! So the Huey comes in, we get on board, and we fly away to safety, leaving everything else behind us. So that's that done. Okay, let's just have a quick look at a couple of things just for completeness, for those of you watching it to sort of learn the game. One thing we didn't look at was a recon action. As I say, this is not necessarily a mission where you'll be doing loads of that, although still useful. If we were approaching this village and there were question marks around, then we'd almost certainly want to get rid of some of those. You've seen, how bad it can be when they spot us. You have to roll on this spotting chart, and invariably it's going to be an NVA unit or a VC, and they're going to be alert. That's the key thing. If they spot us, not only are they alert, which means they'll be more aggressive, but also they will attack us straight away. Okay? Whereas if we recon them, even if it is a unit, they will be unalert and they won't attack us that turn, and they won't be so aggressive when they move. But also there's a good chance of them actually being all clear. So for example, if we were here and we rolled our 6 dice, so it was our turn, let's roll these, and here we've rolled lots of 4s, which is a recon action, as is a 2. So just a single 2 or a single 4. Let's move that to a 2. All these would be recon actions, so plenty of them. Chances of not getting one. We actually needed one. We didn't roll one, but that was just bad luck. Usually, no problem getting one. So let's use the 2 here to recon, say, this one. So what we would do is look on the recon chart again. Dice equals strength. As long as we are all fit and well, we get our 6 dice. Use the standard modifiers. So if we're on a hill, we get an extra 1 at range 2. Before I do that, we should look at the special abilities, I guess. So Young here, his special ability is that he's a trained or experienced scout, I should say. So he gets 1 die on recon. So we instantly go up to 7. So we're not on a hill, we're at range 2, so we'd lose, range 2, so we'd lose 1. Target is in a jungle, so we'd lose another 1. They're not in a village, and they're not in cover, because enemy units are never in cover. We're not pinned, because we can't be pinned, and assuming, well, it is nighttime, look, so if it was nighttime again, we would lose 2 dice. So it's more difficult to see enemies at nighttime. So we'd roll the 3 dice, and we need a 6 to be successful. Okay, so that would fail. But then we've got plenty of others, so we'd use another recon action to go again. This time I've rolled a 6. Okay, so like spotting, when the enemies are just, all we're doing is wanting to get 1 6. We've got a 6 here. That's a successful recon. So we look at the recon chart in the action itself up here. Remember, not the spotting chart. This is in the recon one. It says 6 for success. So we roll 2d6. We've done that. Sorry, what we're talking about. We've been successful. We now roll 2d6. We get an 8. And you'll see that, this is quite a generous chart. If we roll a 2, 3, or 4, then it would be an NVA 6 unit. Okay, but it would be unalert. So it's not great, but still not disastrous. If we roll a 5 or 6, it would be a VC4 unit, which are fairly easy to deal with because we can potentially remove them in attacks and with using the overwhelm action and so on. And they would be on alert again, of course. If we roll a 7 plus, and there's just over a 50% chance of doing that, something like a 56% chance. So most of the time, albeit only just most of the time, but most of the time, you're going to be rolling 7 plus, and that means it's all clear. So that question mark is simply removed. So you can see how a recon action is quite a powerful tool for dealing with these unknown positions. We actually had a couple more, didn't we, in here? So we could then go on and recon this, which would be 7, 6, 5, 4. We get 4 dice for that because they're not in a jungle, so we get 1 more dice when we're reconning this. So maybe I would have recon this first in the game. Maybe we'll go for the easiest one first. We had a couple more recon actions, so again we could do that and recon that on the same turn. We've been successful again. Roll 2d6. This time I've got a 5. That would be a VC4 unit, so converts that question mark, the unknown position, into an unalert VC4 unit. Okay, which remember then just moves around randomly around the board and will only try to spot if within range. Okay, we got that. Yeah, it's not ideal. We've got to deal with it or move away from it or whatever, but it's a lot better than if I'd rolled that same number. Did I roll a 5 then, or what did I roll then? Can't remember if it was 5 or 6. But if I'd rolled a 5 or 6 on the spotting chart, and if that question mark had seen me and I'd rolled a 5 or 6, it would have been an NVA unit or an NVA 6 unit. And they would have been alert, and one of those two is a lot worse than that. So the recon action, whilst it didn't really come through in the mission I played, is crucial to success in the vast majority of missions in the game. It's a key action in the armour, so to speak, of the LERP. That's what LERPs were there for, aren't they? Long range recon patrol, that's what they're doing, reconning. Okay, when I planted my clay, I didn't remove the clay marker, did I? I should have done that, of course. So that would have been no clays left. I think that's about where we're at with that. I think I've covered most things. And the rest of it, there are other events at the bottom here I didn't get to cover. There's an event here that places a checkpoint. They appear on these numbered hexes here. So I think there are, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if you roll that event there, checkpoint, it says roll d6. In that case, I roll the 6, place on numbered hex, and there are these counters at the back of the book, which are checkpoints. So we place that on 6 there. And then there is another, sorry, nobody can enter that hex now, it blocks the hex. And there are another event, there are 2 events here, 4 and 5, which say all checkpoints attack. And they will attack anybody within, well, they'll attack the LERP, of course, if it's within 2 range as normal. So if it's 1 or 2 hexes away, so a great big area around it is now kind of protected. If you move into there, it's a bit of a risk. If you roll event 4 or event 5, which of course a 1 in 3 chance, then they will attack at strength 6, as modified by the usual chart. Okay, so here they would get 6 dice. They'd lose 1 because I'm 2 hexes away, and 2 because it's night time, but they'd still roll 3 dice, can be dangerous. And later missions have checkpoints of strength 8 and 9 as well, so you've got to be a bit careful with those. Can only destroy a checkpoint with an airstrike. Okay, or just avoid them, of course. I think that's about it. There are other bits and pieces, but that's the vast majority of the rules. I think that's it. Good luck, guys. Thanks very much.